Well, our fruit crop is looking really good this year on almost all of our fruit trees here in the orchard. But we're keeping an eye out for our pears and apples because of all the moisture. Again, we're liable to have a high incidence of fire blight. Now, so far things are looking pretty good, but we've usually tried to spray and keep it under control here. So many of you may be seeing fire blight this year, and remember the symptoms again are the end of the branches look like someone's held a fire to them and scorched them because they're black, and then the end will actually curl over, and it's called a shepherd's crook appearance because it has that characteristic. But again, it's usually a black color, and it's can actually encompass the whole tree and kill the tree out over several years. But one of the controls, in addition to spraying a bactericide, is when you get below the branch, usually several inches, you'll prune below that infected area. Now, if you were to prune far enough up and get some of the bacteria on your pruners and you go to a healthy tree or a healthy branch, you can actually spread it. And that's why it's important for us to disinfect the pruners between each cut. And other diseases, we're also encouraging people to do that as well, but especially on bacterial diseases. Now, there's always been really a recommendation among the industry that we can sterilize them with Clorox. And it's always been recommended that we do it at a 1 to 10 part solution. But the University of California recently did a study with various products to see if they would in fact control the disease. Now, what they used in their study was Clorox, Pine Sol, Lysol, just rubbing alcohol, Listerine mouthwash, hydrogen peroxide, and then they tested Cocide 101 and the Agristrip, which are actually some of the fungicides and bactericides that can be used to help control some of the diseases on the trees. Now remember, we're talking specifically in this study the bacteria fire blight, which the pathogen is Erwinia amylivora, excuse me. And what they found, if using these things at 100% strength, the Clorox, the Pine Sol, Lysol, and rubbing alcohol did have an impact and control part of the pathogen, again at 100% or full strength. But when they diluted it to the 1 part to 10 parts, which would be 1 part of the chemical to 10 parts water, they found that they only had some control with Clorox, Pine Sol, and Lysol, so it actually eliminated the rest of them in diluting them. And it's very interesting to think, especially with the Agristrip, that we're spraying that on the tree and it does give us control. But when we dip pruners in the mix, we don't get much of a control on the actual pruners. So that shows it has a different impact on how it works on the tree versus directly on it in the pruners. So again, they found that in the 1 to 10 solution, Clorox, Pine Sol, and Lysol. Now what they also studied was, obviously if we have a lot of cuts to make and we have our solution in a bucket and we're dipping the pruners in there, what they were afraid of is that maybe it would become inactive and wouldn't work as well over a longer period of time. And in fact, they found at 24 hours, those solutions at that recommended rate was still effective in reducing the amount of pathogen. But they also found that none of the products gave 100% surefire control. But what we're saying then is it's still good to try to practice these because it's like an insurance policy. It will help a little bit, but again, it's not goof-proof for 100% control. Now the other thing they found, obviously, if you're dipping these pruners in these types of chemicals, does it have a corrosive impact on it? And sure enough, they found that Clorox and Pine Sol did have a corrosive impact on the pruners where Lysol didn't. So you might want to keep those things in mind too, because it might shorten the life of your pruners and you may have to invest in them more frequently depending on what you use. So it's a nice little study that we can apply it to our home situations in our own home orchard. And I encourage you to start watching the trees, look at your fruit production. You may need to thin them out a little bit too, and always use sanitation practices, especially when you're pruning for fire blight control.